Hello, everybody. This is Debbie Eno from Teacher Success Coach with another episode of the Female Educators Roundtable. But today we're actually dealing with teachers. So post-COVID, as you guys know, during COVID, we had some challenges. Now we actually have left COVID behind. Well, we should have done, but there's still a remnant of it in the classroom. And we actually now navigating the new normal or business as usual. For me, going back into the school, it was business as usual. It was no new normal. The only thing is the students still using sanitizer for their hands. But apart from that, as if we've not had a pandemic, as if life have always been like that. But the only difference, the reminder is the students and the behavior. It is, let's see, it is challenging. It is challenging. And in all my years of teaching, I don't send students out of my classroom. But this year, oh my goodness, I'm sending outside the classroom as if there's sweetie outside for them to collect, right? They're outside of the classroom because I just feel I cannot deal with the disruption because they're disrupting the whole class. And this is year 13s, you know. This is not the little diamonds. These are year 13s. So it's quite sad that I keep on saying to them, the next gate is university, which is in September, October. And they say, Miss, you're saying that every lesson. Yes, I'm saying every lesson, hoping that it clicks in your head. But it's not clicking in the head because they're still playing the fool. Anyway, welcome, Josie. And
Hello.
Today we'll be looking at another educator from across the world who would be sharing her story with us. Welcome. And thank you so very much for accepting the offer to come online to share your after COVID experience with us, because we know it's been an interesting journey. Thank you. Introduce yourself, tell us where you come from, and tell us the group of students you teach.
Hello, my name is Josie McLean. I am a teacher in Arizona, specifically rural Arizona. So we have our own sets of advantages and disadvantages and challenges. And I teach second grade in a public school. So my students are between the ages of 7, 8, some are turning 9 years old. And it's very unique because we are so small. I do only have 9 students this year, which I know is very different than most experiences. So that helps with behavior. But I have been teaching this is my 7th year. I began teaching in 2016, and I graduated with a special education degree. And then I began my career teaching 5th graders for a couple years, and then transitioned to second grade. And in 2021, the middle of the pandemic, where it all blurs together, I earned my master's degree in social emotional learning from an online university here in America.
Okay, hence the reason why you are the lead in the social and emotional sector. That explains everything now, Josie. I
do love it. And honestly, it was never a huge priority to me until the pandemic. And there was a scholarship opportunity. I did not consider myself to want to get that master's degree until the pandemic presented that opportunity.
Right. Thank you for that. You got 9 students.
Yes, last year I had 10.
Oh my goodness.
It is very unique. A lot of people say, oh, is it a private school? No, it's a public Title I school here. It's just very, very small. Our town is very small. Lots of farms around us.
Okay. Oh my goodness. That's teaching in year 12 and year 13, which is the 6 formers. We're talking about age group 16 and 17. You know, very rare you might even have 19, because my class of year 13, I have 12, and year 12, I have 12. 9 students, you could do so much with them.
So much. Every day is like a small group opportunity, but I do have experience with 30 students. When I taught in the metro area, I started my career with 30 to 32 5th graders in one room. And the older they get, the bigger they get, but the room is the same size as the littlest. So I know that this is a rare blessing, but I have experienced chaos in the big classrooms.
Yeah, so you have both, you have both experience. So therefore for you now is, oh my goodness, this is something I need to be grateful for, because I've had the 32 in the class.
I've seen the other side.
Exactly. That's brilliant. Oh, actually, when I taught in a private school, because I taught in 2 private schools, and that was the class, I had 5. I said to them, 5? Is this it? And she said, yes, that's your class. I said, 5? What would you do with 5? You can't really do much with 5 children. You
can work one-on-one so much. And I look at my classroom and I can't imagine having 15 to 20 desks in this room. I just don't know how it would happen.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Oh my goodness. And Joyce, how long have you been in this school?
This is my 4th full year. So my first year in this school was when COVID hit, because it hit mid-year for our school year. So I started in 2019 and I ended in my home on the computer.
All right.
My first year in this school. So that was difficult.
Okay, so how many children you had at the time?
I think I had 12 students that first year in this school. And I know that we will talk about this more, but the transition online was very difficult because there's not a lot of access to strong internet where we are.
Okay. Oh, so how did you manage? We might as well go with the question. How did you manage? How did you manage?
When we first started, I use a communication app, which keeps my phone number private when I'm communicating with parents, and I can send pictures and it's all there. And I just kept using that at the end of the school year when we first went remote, because with 2nd graders, they're so young that I did not send we do have access to one-to-one computers. So in our classroom, every child has a personal computer, which we did send home eventually. But at first I was just making packets for the week. So I would come back to my classroom alone in 2020, and I would make packets of work, send it home to the students. Sometimes I would do deliveries myself to the class, to the homes, and drop it off on their front porch. And then I would get on the messaging app, record myself teaching a lesson in a video, and it would send to the parents' phones, and they would show their children. And that's how we managed at first.
Okay, so you did workbooks.
Yes, workbooks, classroom magazines that I received from different curriculum, and sent home their textbooks. But once we were fully starting the next school year remote, we sent home the Chromebooks, and we taught students how to use Google Classroom and Zoom and the proper way to mute yourself and turn your camera on.
Exactly.
Etiquette lessons.
Okay. Thank you for that, because the online classroom and the online teaching was a joke, because it's like all sorts, who is in the bed and who parents passing with very little clothes on them. It was because some of the children didn't even know how to, put the camera off.
Yes. We have so many stories. I'm sure every teacher has stories. And I know that there was a little bit of a debate between teachers. Should you keep the camera on? Should you be allowed to turn it off? And we have such high poverty in our area that sometimes their home lives are not something they want to display on camera, if that makes sense. So I allowed them to turn their camera off, but they weren't older students who were like savvy enough to sneak away to play video games or get a snack. Like they wanted to be there, and they had their little corner set up. So they were okay with or without the camera, but I know if I was teaching older students, I would possibly have a policy with that because you don't know what they're going to try to pull.
Yes, well, whether or not the school had a policy, the students still were making their own policy. Right? They were making their own policies and procedure. Put the camera on, miss, my camera isn't working.
Yep.
Right. When I said to them, okay, put your mic on, I'm getting message, my mic doesn't work. It's like all of that. Okay, right in the chat. I had a whole pile of excuses. I hated being online. It wasn't conducive to the students, and for me, forget it.
For me, it was more like just maintaining the relationship and not abandoning that completely. Was anything academic accomplished that first set of being online? I don't think very much was accomplished, and that's why we have a learning gap. But to have that relationship with their teacher, checking in every day, how are you? I care about you. I'm here for you. I think that helped a little bit.
Yeah, it is so true because, you know, a lot of the lessons that took place during the pandemic, you have to go over it and get the student to learn it themselves, because if nothing took place, the student are saying to me openly now, Miss, I was in my bed. Miss, my camera, the reason why they have my camera on, who want to put the camera on when they're lying in the bed? So the students are openly now confessing all of those things. While, you know, I would be coming all excited and all of that. And I would say, is anybody there? Speak to me. And there was nobody speaking to me. It was just me one.
Yep, you're speaking to an empty void. And for me, I was a little frustrated because I would see other schools like the one I used to teach at, they were allowing their teachers to Zoom from home. If you had everything you needed and you had a quiet workspace, you were allowed to stay home, because I'm doing the same thing here in my classroom talking to you as I would at home. Does that make sense? Like if I'm wearing something professional and I have a blank wall and I have every material I need, I feel like I could still be just as effective at home. My school required me to come to an empty classroom the entire time. So I'm still driving to work to an empty classroom. And I understand it was for accountability for teachers, but if you trust us as professionals, I could have done my lessons with a whiteboard at home. And so I was every day for my contract time sitting in an empty classroom, when we know developmentally the students at the age I teach could only be on the computer like 30 minutes at a time, need a break, 30 minutes need like they could not be on 6 hours straight on the computer, but I had to be in the classroom alone with no student.
Wow, it's interesting because one of the schools I taught in while we were online, I taught from home. And the other school, the same year when we went back, I taught in the classroom for 2 days because I wanted to familiarize myself with the whole thing. For 2 days after that, I taught from home until
and it could be your preference too if you want to stay in your classroom. Like I'm here in my classroom right now because I have cats at home that would probably try to interrupt our meeting right now. So it would be better to be here. But I think the administrators and the higher ups should trust us as professionals. If you think you can do what you need to do at home and save some gas money and your car.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. No, we had a choice. You know, for the first 2-3 days I taught in the classroom, and I think, hold on, I don't want to teach in the classroom. I said, I'm not going to come back. I'm going to be staying at home. And I said, you know, which was nice, you know, because it meant that, you know, you were coming down. Yes, you were in your PJ bottoms, but you were nicely dressed at the top, right?
Right. You know that. You should do that. And you have access to food.
Yeah.
You don't have to pack a lunch. Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay. So yeah, we just spoke about, you know, what was it like coming back into the physical classroom? but you didn't go anyway. So you didn't even come back to the physical classroom, right?
I never left. No,
Exactly.
the kids,
Exactly.
when the kids started coming back, now I get my dates a little jumbled up. That first full year back in 2020, 2021, we allowed for kids to come back because some of the parents had to go back to work, or their caregivers had to go back to work, or they did not have internet access. And so even though I only had 10 students, which I'm grateful for, they allowed some students to be at home and some in the classroom. And I don't know how many other schools did this, but I had to have my computer next to me while I was teaching, and I had to teach online and in person simultaneously, because in our school, there's only one teacher per grade level. So we couldn't split it up where I take all the students who are at school and my teammate takes all the students that are at home. Each teacher had to do both jobs. And I think that's an impossible ask for us.
Yeah.
It was not effective at all.
Yeah. I share that because when I taught in another school from the October of that same year. And I had to do hybrid because some students were at home isolating, and I had some at school, and I had to do both. And there's sometimes they say, Miss, the ones at home, they cannot see because you've just turned your back. I say, oh gosh, I forgot. And it's like, I keep on saying that, please remind me. If you guys see that I'm not, doing it so everybody could see, just remind me. It was challenging having to teach two groups because in the classroom, you tend to turn around and direct your conversation to the students. But it's like,
and you forget kids are on the computer.
Yeah. And there's sometimes like because at the time I was teaching a private school, so I had 9, 10. It's like half the same way I had half at school and half at home. And I constantly had to remember, because I remember one student saying to me, Miss, you forgot you haven't connect them, those at home, to the online. So I said, oh my goodness. I said, we halfway through the lesson already, right? It wasn't easy.
Exactly. It wasn't easy. So once we did away with that and we required everyone to come back to school, I was grateful. I know that we are also we're near a native reservation of an indigenous tribe, and they had their own set of rules about quarantining. Like, they were a little bit more strict that the families could not leave. So they had to be learning from home, and it took a while for them to transition back, but now we are fully. And I know you'll ask probably something like, what are our challenges now today?
Yes.
And the biggest thing for us now that we're fully in person is truancy and absenteeism. It is horrible because I know you can still get COVID and should quarantine for 5 to 7 days, but there are some families that will have an excused absence 3 times a month. And I've had students miss over 50% of the days. And we had to get a truancy officer. And that was a mess because part of that time was still COVID and part of it was not COVID. And so how much could we enforce and how much could we not enforce? So I had students failing, and then their caregivers were asking, why are they failing? They're never at school. How can you pass if you don't show up?
Oh my goodness. So those are some of your challenges. Wow.
That's the biggest one, truancy. And then of course there's learning loss. We all experience that, the gaps. But like you said, behavior is something, it's apathy. It's apathy with my students. I don't know if you noticed that, but it's like their short-term attention span because of technology, like the apps like TikTok and the short videos, in one ear, out the other. I don't know how to help retain their memory. I just, like, that's a neurological thing. It's not something I can teach strategies for. They literally don't remember what I taught them yesterday.
Yep. Interesting. I said to a group of students I had yesterday, I said it because I was teaching them something, and I said to them, my goodness, you guys have TikTok brains.
Yes.
And they said to me, yes, miss, it's technology. I said, but it doesn't help me. I said, because I'm trying to recap something from you guys, and you guys saying to me, miss, I can't remember. And I said to them, as if I spent the last 20, 30 minutes talking to myself. And it's a real issue. Like you, I don't know how to deal with it, because as much as my background is psychology, it's like giving them chunks, but the chunks I'm giving them, it's still going, it's just keep getting lost.
You're using everything that you are professionally trained for.
Yeah.
And I'm in the camp where it's almost like, if you can't beat them, join them. So we've got, with the little kids, songs to the tune of the TikTok, or ways to remember jingles, and making things interactive and a lot more technology based. Like, I think that technology is a double-edged sword, because there's so many wonderful programs, but then we don't know what they have access to at home, or what they're getting away with, because the grown-up at home doesn't know what's healthy, what's not healthy, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And then they come back to school, and I recognize the songs. I don't have a TikTok, but I know the songs, and they can remember every single TikTok song, but they can't remember the strategy that I taught them.
Yep. And you know, the interesting thing about that is, because they're so much more advanced than the parents don't even know what they're looking at. That was a discussion I had yesterday with another group, that, you know, you have children as young as in primary school, and because they're so much more advanced, the parents don't know. And the student said to me something yesterday, we was interested. They said there's a program that appears to be children's program, but some of the things, the information they're giving the young people are very detrimental. And the parents would look at it and think, oh yes, it's cartoon. Yeah, and you know, it's okay, because they're not sitting there to see the program the child's looking at. And it's not. It's, you know, one of them say, you know, it was one of them telling them how to commit suicide, another one telling them, you know, how to drink bleach, and all of these things. I said, what? They said, because initially what it does is it appears as a children's program.
And that's part of the social emotional learning aspect, that we have this additional role of not just teaching the academics, but now like, what is safe? What do you do? Like, I am very scared about misinformation. You can Google anything, and the child might take it at face value, or not understand how to determine what is fact checked and what is biased, and what is safe and unsafe, and what is true and what's not true. And now that role is on us as the adult, the consistent adult in the classroom, because I'm not discrediting caregivers. I think that they're doing we're all doing the best that we can, but I don't know if they have the tools or the resources or the knowledge and training to teach those skills, teach technology skills, teach financial literacy skills, teach like de-escalation strategies, you know?
Thank you. It is so true, because one of my worry, when the student told me that yesterday, I was quite naive, I must be, because I did not even think that there would be programs out there that would appear as children's program, cartoons, like cartoons, etc., and then showing children how to drink bleach.
I've never heard that. And I was a very protected child. My parents were very, very overprotective in a good way, that I couldn't even watch The Simpsons growing up. You know, it's a cartoon that looks like it's appropriate for kids, but there's some things that aren't. And it's so hard when you see there are adult oriented cartoons out there, but they look like they're child friendly.
Exactly. And I think that's what the students were trying to tell me yesterday. And they actually, because, you know, we were discussing like things like that, and they're having TikTok grades, etc. And they were actually showing me and telling me what's going on with this program. I said to them, it's very dangerous. And I said, that's where parents come in, because as much as we feel that, oh, it's cartoon, we need to have a look at it so we know it is really, you know, appropriate for these children. And it appears as it's not. It's just really, it's mind-blowing out there. It's mind-blowing. Thank you. One of the questions is, do you think there is a student community that exists in your class?
Again, I'm in a very unique situation that because there's only one class per grade level, the group of students I have, they have been in the same group. They don't mix because they're the only ones in their grade. So there's not, oh, which teacher did you get? Like a lot of schools have maybe 4 teachers of the same level, and there's just one. So they have to like each other because they're going to be in the same class until they leave our school, unless they move or we get students. So in my case, there's a very strong sense of community. However, I think this particular grade that I have this year is the age group that began their schooling in the pandemic. They did not begin a normal year. So I'm seeing the effects of that, but I have to give credit to the teacher in their grade before me. The first grade teacher worked so diligently on growing their literacy skills. I know the question was about community, but this particular group academically it's very unique because I'm not seeing the gaps that a lot of other teachers are seeing with reading. But developmentally and behaviorally, I think that they are lacking regulation skills, self-control, memory. A lot of the boys in my class are very physical with each other. So we do have a strong sense of community that we do a morning meeting and an afternoon meeting, and we are comfortable being paired up with anybody or being in a group. I do have a student with autism this year, and it has been amazing to see all the other students come around him and treat him like he is just as like anyone else, which he is. But I have one student who tends to be a little bit of a bully on the playground. Like he's just much more physical because I think it's allowed at home to be rough with his siblings. And then his caregiver and I are in communication saying, I'm working on it at home, I'm working on it at school, he knows better, but he has been a buddy to my autistic student, and he will, I'll help him, I'll partner with him every time. So there's empathy in all of the students. I think there's no lack of empathy, but there's lack of self-control, and there's lack of boundaries, and there's, when it comes to schoolwork, there's apathy is what I'm seeing. They just don't care. Oh, I failed it and I could redo it. I don't want to redo it. I'm okay. Just give me the F. And I'm like, I can't make you want to do better. I can encourage you and tell you it's important and maybe talk about retention for you, but they have to have that sense of ownership. Is there a sense of community? Yes. Are there other skills that they need to develop? Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because that was one of my questions in terms of what are the students' attitude like? And that's exactly what you said, because yesterday I had another student. I've said to the student, I cannot understand your handwriting. He did a mock. I said, I want you to come. So when you actually read it out, I'll write it. Right. I told him that on Wednesday. He said, yes, Miss, I'll come and see you after the lesson, after school. After school, I didn't see him. I messaged him. I said to him, you need to come and see me on Thursday. Thursday morning, I saw him in my lesson. I said, you need to come. He said, Miss, just give me a U. I said, what do you mean just give you a U? Yes, miss, just give me a U because I know
They're just
that
okay with it.
my academic abilities is greater than that. But you know, I just can't be asked, miss.
And I know that we can't, grades can be subjective and they have to be put in as part of a way to record.
Yeah.
But I have the philosophy of giving kids as many chances as they, like, I don't, they're younger. I don't say you only get one retake before we move on. I tell their family members and them, you can take this as many times as you want until you're satisfied with your grade. And I don't think anybody has retaken a test in my class this whole year. They could. I have copies ready. I have time set aside. They won't miss recess for it, but they don't do it. And I'm like, okay.
Wow, isn't it amazing though? Because when a student said to me, oh, miss, just give me a U. I said, I can't. He said, miss, but I'm telling you to give me a U. And he still haven't come back to start that, to transcribe it for me. So I'm left with no alternative than just giving me an X because he didn't turn up. And it's like, really?
And you have the older students, like, if that's what they're showing you now, it makes me nervous about the workforce when they're adults working, like, exactly. Oh, I just won't show up. It's more of the principle of you show up because that's your job. Exactly. Your job is to be a student, show up and try to do your best.
Yeah, exactly. And that was, you know, he said, well, miss, I told you to just give me a U. And I'm thinking, oh my, well, you know, he haven't turned up because I gave him 3 opportunities. Even when I saw him in my class, I said, we could do it in break time. No, miss, that's my break time. I said, okay, you could do it in my time. No, miss, I've got something. He's got something to do. Okay.
Yeah, everything's more important.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. What does self-care and mental well-being looks like for you? Do you think that's supported in your school?
In my school, it's not really talked about. Like when we do have meetings or something, it's more of a focus on academic and truancy issues. But I think we have a strong sense of community among the adults that we could go to each other if we needed help. And I will say my administrator is very generous with, if you need to take a day off, take a day off. If you need to take your sick days, I mean, we only have the certain amount of days we can take, but she won't. I remember at my last school, and this was way before the pandemic, so I understand it might have changed since then, but we were not allowed to take days off right before like a weekend to make a long weekend, or we couldn't take days before or after a holiday break. So you couldn't extend your break. And for me, a lot of it's traveling because I moved to a different state from my family. So I had to find the right kind of flights to not miss work for seeing my family. But here at this school, if you need to take a half day because where we are, it's so far to go to doctor's appointments. And so it takes a while for us to drive places. They're very supportive of that. What self-care looks like for me is I do not take work home with me.
Whoa.
I don't, I mean, again, I only have 9 students. I can grade things very quickly, but weekends and weeknights, I do not take any work home unless I'm behind.
Wow, that's fantastic. I've got a bag full of marking to do. I have a bag full of marking to do. That's brilliant.
Sometimes I stay later at school, but because I'm in my element here and I can get things done quickly, but at the same time, my commute to home is not very long either. So I'm comfortable staying a little later.
Okay.
When I lived in a busy city, it took a long time to go home because of traffic.
Right. Yeah. 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 I love that you don't take work home. So therefore, what in school remain at school. That's brilliant. I'm trying to work it. I'm trying to work it. You
It's
know.
it's tough. Boundaries. I'm learning. I don't
Yeah.
set a lot of boundaries for myself.
Yeah, it's I'm trying because last week I was meant to my student did the mock and I was meant to mark the work. I keep on carrying it in the bag, carrying it in the bag. The deadline was Wednesday, and I know I had to sit myself down at work, and I was just getting it done. So it was just doing some travel with me for a few days, right? It traveled for a
Yep.
few days
Yep.
until
I know that. Yeah.
until I thought, look, you can't afford to have a travel with you. You need to sit at that school, finish, leave at 7 o'clock, and and get it sorted, or six, whatever. And I had to get it sorted. And I came home and I just mark and just I think, yeah, it's done. So that's what I'm hoping to do this weekend, to get this marking done. So therefore, I start setting boundaries that I do it in break time, or I do it when I have a free period, that I don't have to take it home, because I really don't want to take it home. It's
I
not.
understand that. But sometimes you also have to use your free period at school to just sit in silence
Yeah, that's what I've been
and
doing. Yeah,
recover
yeah,
from the overstimulation of what happened with the students.
yeah.
Sometimes my scheduled planning period is just sitting in silence on my
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah, that's what I did last week, because I felt when I had my pre-planning period, I just wanted to unload, because the student came back last week after break and they were high as a kite. And I just felt I just needed to go back and just sit there and do nothing, meditate for a little while. That's what I did in my free period. I just meditated because I needed that time.
Mm-hmm. And my biggest thing that I've learned from the pandemic is a dysregulated teacher cannot teach, and they can't help dysregulated students. So
Mhm.
if we feel ourselves being pushed, overstimulated, or tested by our students, we need to regulate our emotions. And I think that's so unique to teaching, because
Yeah,
in another workforce, you might lose your temper with another adult, but they're two adults that understand the high stress and
yeah,
can talk it out. You can't, I mean, we need to normalize apologizing to our students if we're human. And if
yeah,
we do lose our cool, we stop and say, I'm sorry, I should not have said that. I should not
yeah,
have used that tone of voice with you. I was in the wrong. But
yeah,
let's not get to that point and meditate
yeah,
so we
yeah.
don't reach it.
Yeah, it's interesting because last week I really did lose it with one student. I said to him, just leave the classroom, because he came in without a pen. He came in the lesson, the previous day without a pen. I gave him a pen. The next lesson, he came in without a pen and without his books. This is a 17-year-old. By this time, I said to him, remove yourself from my classroom. Miss, what do you mean? I said, remove yourself from my classroom. You're not ready to study yet.
And that is a boundary. Like, you can't leave the classroom because you have to watch the other students. We can't
Exactly.
walk away and say, I need a minute. So you
Yeah.
have to do that with the students.
Yeah. I said to him, you need to leave the classroom, because how could you come to your lesson without a pen and without your books? Which
Not
means you're not
prepared.
yet ready. And you're 16, you are doing A levels at the end of the next 4 weeks, and your next step is university. You're not ready. Take yourself and go and sit outside the principal's office. And when he asks you why you're there, you need to say that Miss sent you out because you didn't have a pen or a book. I had
And
to.
at that age, like I'm supposed to teach my age students, you have to come prepared. We do make mistakes. I have extra pencils and paper, but you do need to come prepared, because then when you get to be an adult, which is where your students almost are, you can't go to work unprepared, because after 3 strikes, you might be terminated from your job.
Exactly. But you see, as I said to the class after, I said the first day he came without a pen, without his book. I said, here you are, a pen. He didn't even give it back to me. I said, here's some paper. The next day you come back without pen and without paper. Come on. No, I couldn't deal with that. I had to tell him, take his exit. You know, whether or not it was right or wrong. And I had to reflect on that. And then I realized I had no option because, and he didn't even do it discreetly. He was disrupting the whole class to ask for a pen and paper.
And that was a consequence you chose. And we have to make so many split-second decisions that I probably would have done the same thing. With a student that age, they should know better.
Exactly. Then I said to the rest of the class, I said, you guys need to have the tools for the job. I said, it's like coming a plumber, asking a plumber to come and do a job for me. The plumber come without his tools. What good is it? You know, I said to him, there's no point in you coming because you haven't got your tool for the job. I said, that's exactly it. And, you know, it's interesting because yesterday I saw some of the students and they were talking about it. They said, Miss, you were really strict. I said, really? I said, no, I wasn't. You know,
I was fair. Yeah.
Exactly. It really is. Some of these are interesting when you think about the students. Huh? Well, another question is, what, right now that we're back in the physical, what, you know, how are the mindset of your students? Do you think that they have a growth mindset? Do you think they have, you know, a fixed mindset? Do you think it's flexible? What that mindset like right now coming back?
Yeah, I think it comes back to nature versus nurture, because we can start the year and do everything we can to equip them to practice growth mindset skills. I use the visualization of a pit, and you're down in the learning pit when you're stuck and frustrated. And there are strategies. You can ask a friend, you can ask a teacher, you can take a minute, you can take a break to help you climb out of the pit, but you can't stay stuck in the pit, which is the fixed mindset. And we made a poster as a class, we put it on the wall to refer to throughout the year. And so I can teach them all these skills and feel like, remind them, should we have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? Like, how do you want to solve this problem? Because problems will happen. But I also think innately who they are could just be someone who, I'm going to give up. And it's hard because every child is different and you're working with a large group. So you have to preach a growth mindset, but some students, and I think it also depends on what time of day it is. If it's literacy and they can't read, they might be really frustrated and have a fixed mindset. If they do not enjoy math and it's difficult for them, they might have a fixed mindset, but then they might love physical education or art or science. So I think overall, my students have a growth mindset. I think it depends on the year, the individual, but there are students that you can visibly see their apathy and fixed mindset and wanting to give up. And I do not let them give up. They have to complete the assignment, even if they don't want to.
Yeah, I take that view as well, because or else it's quite easy for them to just stay stuck.
Yes. And that's what we're here for. I tell them, I am only one person. You need to wait your turn, but I will get to you if you have a question.
Yeah. Thank you for that. As a teacher, what are the things that stresses you out?
So much that I get worked up about are out of my control. And I think everyone could agree on that. Policy, politics, in America especially. I think curriculum, expectations,
yes.
Trying to find the right one, but the school has to maybe follow certain regulations and the paperwork and the formatting. Something that stresses me out is low pay.
That's why we're on strike here.
Yes, my heart goes out to you. None of the things that stress me out that first come to mind have anything to do with the children. None of it. Sometimes in the moment, in the middle of a Thursday, when you're looking forward to the end of the week, the students are just, they are on one, they cannot sit still, they need extra breaks. And that can stress me out in the moment. But when I go home, that's not what is bothering me. It's the bigger systemic issues that keep at it and wear you down. They wear us down.
Yeah. Thank you. It's interesting because last week I was saying to my colleagues, I said to them, I came from a lesson, I said to them, gosh, what really stressed you guys out? And they said, the curriculum. I said, oh my goodness. I thought it was me. I'm the only one because we've got to finish this curriculum. You're just cutting over it. The students are not understanding it in depth. You just have to just breeze over it. And you're not teaching them in depth any topic. You're just giving them bite size.
Surface level for everything. I think a lot of curriculums, I wonder how many are even written with a teacher at the table, because it's not feasible to get through the whole curriculum, and you have to sit down as a teacher and go do the extra work and go the extra mile to figure out what could be cut if you have to cut something. And on that topic, testing is also something in America. We're in testing season right now. And that doesn't come to mind for me now because I teach a grade where state testing, it doesn't start till the third grade. The next year is when it counts. So I always say that I think teachers who teach third grade and above should be paid a little bit more. We have the foundational skills that we have to teach kids to read from scratch, but we don't have the stress of state testing and how those scores affect funding, affect your evaluations as a teacher, your effectiveness as a school. And so I applaud, because I was there when I used to teach fifth grade and had the stress of that. And I think that is something that, again, is out of our control, but is a huge stressor for teachers.
It is, because it's like this week, our students have GCSEs and A-levels in the next few weeks. And I came in and I said to my colleagues, I said, oh my goodness. I said, I'm so concerned about the students. She says, so am I. And it's like, we are just sitting there, a bunch of stressed teachers. You know, we're thinking, they've got exams and they're not ready. They are not ready. And I said to her yesterday when I was leaving, you know, I left one of my colleagues. I said, you know what, I've decided I'm going to, let it go. So I said to her yesterday, I said, I need to let it go. I said, because we seem to be stressing and the students are not, right? We are stressing.
They don't understand the gravity of it.
Yeah, they're not stressing. They're just, you know, their behavior, you know, one of my colleagues said their behavior is demonstrating that they're stressed because they're projecting onto us. I said, that's the point. But we are visibly stressed. You know, it's just really, it's just, teaching is wonderful, but it's also very stressful.
Yes. And who came up with these indicators that you're ready? You know, like, if we can equip them to be functioning adults, that's what matters. But these milestones that they have to meet when everyone's brain works differently is so frustrating, because you have to cater to, you have to diversify and differentiate, and it's really hard to do when it's just one person.
Oh my goodness, thank you for that. I think it was on one of my shows last week. I said to them, when we talk about differentiation, it's just a talk. It's not real, because for one teacher that has a group of 27 students, I'm fortunate because the school I'm in, you know, the majority of the maximum number of students I have is year 10 and they're 27. I've had the 30, 32, etc. 27 make a big difference. 3 less is good.
Yes.
And I was saying that in the school, in the class, you might have 4 children that have diverse needs. It is impossible, I think so, that's for me, to really cater for each child's needs. Because if you have 4 children with diverse needs, you're lucky. There's sometimes you have half of the class. You have dyslexic, you have ADHD, you name it, you've got it. So how could we differentiate for all the students with this diverse needs? Personally, I don't think it's possible.
Unless we have team teachers in one room and have everyone have 2 or 3, but we have such a shortage of teachers that it's hard to even staff one school with one teacher in the classroom. I really had a tough year last year. This year, I'm so fortunate. I've had a wonderful year. Last year, I had kids reading way above grade level. I had kids who could not even name their letters. And how, even if it's a small group, how could I be teaching 2 separate classes? Then some are at home and some are at school. It's 4 different classes with one teacher. It's impossible.
Yeah, I share that, because when I look at it, I'm thinking, my goodness, it's like one of the class I have got 12 students, and at least 6 of them have diverse needs. And I'm sitting there thinking, how the hell am I going to do this?
And we do what we can. We don't give up. We don't admit defeat, but I don't know if we're meeting their needs properly.
No, but well, I know I'm not, because it is difficult to juggle the balls and have it balanced.
Yes. Yes.
You know, because that I use various strategy in my class, learning tools, etc. You know, because in one class I might use 4 different techniques. I'm thinking, okay, my aim for doing 4 different, group work, reading, presentation, PowerPoint. I think at least someone is going to catch something, right?
Yeah. And with the age group that I have, there's a very large lack of independence. So I may teach you different skills to try to work through it on your own while I'm with another student, but they will shut down because they just lack independence. I think they want reassurance from an adult at all times.
Yeah. It's interesting. Your young children need that. The older ones need that too,
Yes.
My 16 and 17, every minute I have to remind them that they're great, etc., because they need that reassurance. And it's like constant. It really is challenging and interesting. Thank you for that. One of the other questions is, do you feel that being a teacher in the 21st century is more challenging than ever before?
Well, I can't speak to decades ago. I do keep in contact with my own primary school teachers. Like, we are Facebook friends. They are my mentors, and I love sharing what I'm doing in my classroom with them, and some of the things I learned from them when I was a student, I do with my students, little fun activities. But I think we are up against the monster of technology. I think personally, I don't have the data, the processed foods and the dyes and all of that, not even considering the pandemic. I think that it's been getting harder and harder because the monster of unhealthy food and lack of getting out there and playing outside and technology. I think I would argue our own set of challenges can make it nearly impossible. It's just an uphill battle, and I fear that it will only get more difficult. And then the pandemic was thrown in. They didn't make a pandemic. It happened, and it threw us all for a loop. But I think that I was taught in the pandemic how to become more flexible and adaptable. And I think that's something I'm trying to teach students, but I was never that person. And I'm learning that as I go. So I have to pick my battles. You have to pick your battles with your students. And I think to answer your question shortly, yeah, probably the hardest to be a teacher right now.
Yep, that's why they're not staying in profession, they're all leaving.
Yes, and I think, this is a little, I don't know if it's everywhere, but here in America, I really do think that there's a war on public education with weaponizing political things. I think that's making it hard.
Yep. I think it's across the board. Across the board. Next Thursday, we're on strike, teachers pay. And the following week we're on strike as well, teachers pay.
We're in solidarity with you because I see it a lot with the different states in our country, but I'm not as aware of what's happening in other countries. And so my heart goes out to you, and I hope that some resolution happens for you.
Thank you. We desperately need one because we've already had 3-day strike already, and we have another 2 coming up, and there seems to be possibility of more. And it's kind of a challenging because when you're on strike, there's no pay. You're on strike. As much as we see the need, we know we need to be on strike. Because when you go back after a strike day, you're just trying to make up.
Yes. Yeah, that's very hard.
Yeah, it's just really challenging. Okay, as a teacher, what's the most rewarding aspect of teaching?
I'm sure we can all agree when students make those connections and apply what you taught, those aha moments, that is why we went into it's to grow the whole person. And so when I not only see my students flourish in the academics, but also as humans, and they have empathy, and they it's almost like I can see the future flash for a minute and see them helping in their job or helping a stranger in the adult world. I just see them growing into beautiful, wonderful, amazing, strong individuals with amazing hearts. And that to me, I'm not a parent, but when I talk with my own mother, she said, my greatest pride as a parent is knowing that my kids became good people, and they want good, they want to do good, put good out in the world. And that's all I hope for my students. So when I see that, and the community we formed, the family we formed, I think that's the most rewarding thing. I come to school every day excited. There's going to be challenges, there's going to be behavioral issues, and they will fight back a little bit, but it's really hard to leave them at the end of the year. It is really hard.
Yeah, thank you for that. I share that. I see my student as a flower bud, and then throughout the year you just see it coming up, and then you just see it blossom. It is so beautiful to see.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. Amidst all the challenges we have, when, as you rightly say, the aha moment, because after my lesson, before my students leave my lesson, I say, okay, tell me what you're taking away from my lesson, what's in your head. And it was so wonderful yesterday to see them all fighting to go, to fighting to stay. And I said, wow, we need to celebrate. It's so lovely to see them all fighting to give you an answer. Because
that's amazing.
It's just really, it's nice. It's really is nice to see that. You're thinking, oh my goodness. And one of them going to meet you in the corridor and say, Miss, I understand the connection. I said, fantastic. I said, oh my goodness, my girl is on power, and it's just really nice to see that. Those are the beautiful moments. So it actually outweighs some of the, the challenges you might have of sending them out. And there's sometimes some of the same students you said now, they would come to you and say, Miss, I didn't agree with you sending me out, I say, okay, I hear that, but life is unfair sometimes. Okay, what are you going to do differently? You know, so it's quite nice when, you know, they actually
When
come
they're
up.
reflective, yeah, and you can have a
Exactly,
good conversation with them.
exactly, exactly, which is a real plus. Thank you. Another question, one more after this. Do you think that teaching should be teacher-led, teacher-center, or student-led, student-center?
I think 100% it should always be student-centered. We do have to follow curriculum, but I think you have to pivot and see the needs. And if the if the lesson flopped and the entire class did not get the objective, then I think that reflects on you as the teacher and not them as students. Because if nobody understood, then I did something wrong. I did not explain it clearly enough. Let's go back. This is on me, and try a different approach. But when it comes to being teacher-led or student-led, we always try to have like 50-50 talk, like have the teacher not talk the whole time and have students talk and group work and have them lead. But I think when it's introducing new topics and new strategies, that is 100%. Like if I need to meet an objective with my students, I have to explicitly teach them. So a lot of times, because my group is so small, I am at the front of the room. And so I would say student-centered, but mostly teacher-led until, you know, you can let off that level of responsibility and pass it to the students.
Thank you. The fact that you teach younger children, you know, I could see why it is going to be quite some aspect of teacher-led. You see, because they're younger. For me, I'm teaching students that either GCSEs or students that is A-levels. Yeah. So which means that the 16, 17-year-old and the 14, 15-year-old, as I said to them, I expect you to take ownership. And sometimes doing that with the 14-year-old is much more challenging, because on Thursday, one of my colleagues came in, my head of department, she said to me after, oh, I saw you were doing group work, that's brilliant. I looked at her, I said, let's just rephrase that. I was trying to do group work. I said to her, well, it kind of did work, but it was hard work to get it to work, you know. So as much as I wanted it to be student-led, it wasn't as much as I expected it, because they wanted to work with their friends, then they were disruptive, and they was asking for I was asking them to feedback on the board from the mind map. This group was saying this, or this group mind map was ugly. And you know, you had that kind of
drama.
Exactly. I had real drama. So
yeah, and you do have older students, but their prefrontal cortex still, you forget, like, oh, they are not adults yet. Like,
exactly.
They need that guidance.
It is very true, especially as we know, although they're 14-year-old, they're 12 years in mentally develop. Mentally developed, they're only 12 years old because they've missed the developmental stage during the COVID period. So they come back to us, not the age they ought to be, but the age previously.
Yes, yes.
You know, and it really is challenging, because it's like they were talking about my group poster is better than your group. Really? I said, stop
the
that.
Bickering.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I had that, and it's like, well, miss, they criticize our poster first. Oh my goodness. And then I had to pause and then go into this big thing about why you should not be negative, and the implementation of negative, you know, and the impact of negativity. You know, we just had our daily quote, and it says that, you know, some of you are deadlift, because in my lesson I give them various quotes. So one quote might be, oh, I'm thriving to be better. I said all of that. And then you guys come with negativity. It's challenging. So as much as I wanted the group work to be fantastic, student-led, it was student-led to a point, but it was teacher-directed.
Yes.
You know, I had to because it was getting out of hand.
Nothing goes to our expectations. Nothing does.
Exactly. Thank you. The final question, what are some of the tips that you would give to teachers to deal with their mental health and well-being, reduce anxiety, reduce overwhelm, and reduce burnout?
I think schedule a day a week to just do nothing. I mean, not nothing, but like tomorrow I might go kayaking or something with my husband, but I am not doing chores. I'm not going to work. I'm not thinking about work. I am not going to the store. That for me, I mean, I'm not a parent again, so I don't have to take care of my own children on the weekends, which is a whole, I applaud anyone who's a teacher and a parent right now. And I think finding someone on campus that could be an accountability partner. I think someone that you can confide in when you're frustrated or stressed, who's understanding the same dynamics of work without letting it be gossip or something that's not productive. Like if you are frustrated and you need to tell someone that will understand, to find someone that you establish this like boundary that what we talk about stays between us, and after we discuss it, it's not talked about again. And then shoot each other ideas that maybe this is something you need to take to the administrator because you're not the only one feeling this way, or maybe this is something that's more in your head and you're not really seeing the situation as a whole. Or yes, those kids were frustrating today. I can relate to that and empathize with that. So I think finding an accountability partner, or how are you doing with your goals, or let's take a walk together, just to not feel so alone, because that's something that I feel in our profession, when you're alone every day with your students, you're the only adult and you can't speak to your students the way you can speak to an adult, and you need that kind of camaraderie to just be able to decompress together.
Thank you. That is so true. And one of the other things you said earlier on was boundaries. I think it's so important.
Boundaries. Yeah.
So important. You know, and also the fact that try as much as possible. This is what I'm going to do for myself next week. I told myself that. Try as much as possible to leave the marking on your desk until
I know it's so hard.
It is. It is, but you know, the interesting thing about it, when you talk to most teachers, right, they keep on coming home with a bag of marking and they're going back with a bag of marking.
Oh, I have a bag. Trust me, I take it home like I think I need to keep bringing one to work. I don't take the papers home. It's just a bag with, like, you know, ibuprofen and my lunch bag and a water bottle, but I bring something back and forth without any actual work in it. Sometimes the papers make it, sometimes the tests make it home, but like you said, they don't get done at home. It's just, they take a ride in the car.
Exactly. It's like a security thing, because it's like last week I was carrying, you know, I had 2 weeks of Easter. I didn't do the marking. I keep on saying, yes, I will. I'm thinking, oh, I don't feel I should. And I was protesting, right? And on Monday, I decided to bring it into work. I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I brought it back home on Monday. And when I realized, oh my goodness, deadline is Wednesday, you need to sit down and do this marking. And I had to really, because I had 2 sets. And I sat there and I'm thinking, this was going home back and forth. And I just sat and I marked it and I'm thinking, you stay right here, you're done. You know, and I came home with a next set of marking because I asked them to do some essays for me. They've done the essays. And I think, yes. And on the way home, I say, you know what? I am not coming back home with this marking. I'm going to get them to peer mark. So when the peer mark, I would just look at it.
That's smart.
I have to.
With the older kids.
Yeah, I have to, because I realize I have 3 sets of marking to do. Makes no sense. Now, I told myself I'm going to sit down this week, bliss it out, and when I go back next week, say, oh yes, well, I did 3 sets of marking for you guys, now it's peer marking, and I'm going to check it. I've got to be smart, or else this backpack is breaking my back, and I keep on going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with the papers in the bag.
Take that load off. Take the load off. Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And it's interesting because us teachers always seem to be doing is bringing this bag home, with the marking, it doesn't even get opened and it comes back to the school, you know.
Yep.
I tell you, the life of a teacher, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you very, very much for our chat. Is there anything else you want to say before we say goodbye to the audience?
I am just so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you. It was wonderful to speak with you and to share my experience and learn more about your experience. And I hope that anyone who's watching can find something they can relate to, or sometimes we need to be reminded of things. Like, I don't always practice what I preach. So to be reminded of that is nice.
Yes, that's very true. And thank you very much. And something we need to remind ourselves is we are good enough and we're doing a fantastic job.
Yes, if you're worried if you're a good teacher. Yes, if you're worried you're a good teacher, you're already a good teacher.
Exactly.
We care about these kids so much.
Yeah, that's the reason why we joined the profession. Yes, there's sometimes I would have to send them out because they're disrupting the whole class. And, you know, sending one out is better than disruption of the whole class. So there's sometimes we have to, you know, make some decision like that. But on the whole, we are doing a fantastic job. We need to remind ourselves of that. And we need to celebrate it because, come on, the students are learning something. It may not be everything we expect them to learn because we have high expectations than they're able to deliver. However, we need to celebrate them. And
celebrate and they will rise to the challenge.
Exactly. And most of all, we need to celebrate ourselves. Teachers, man, we need to celebrate ourselves, man. We're doing a fantastic job. Forget about what the masters say. We in the classroom, the masters are not in the classroom. We know what it's like. You know, so it's important. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. My next time I'll see you guys is next Wednesday when I'll be looking at women empowerment and what triggers us to be empowered. So like teachers, what triggers us to be empowered is our students sometimes, you know.
Absolutely.
So that's what we'll be looking at next Wednesday. Next Friday is the home education, and next Saturday it would be female education from around the world, sharing the journey again. Thank you very much, guys. Take care, stay blessed. It was fantastic. See you guys soon. What's going on here?